I've been trying to keep it together for the past week since I found out the truth. I've been going through the motions, doing my best to compartmentalize the pain, shoving it into the darkest corner of my mind just to make it through the day. But this morning, everything fell apart. And the trigger? It was something so small, so seemingly insignificant. I was sitting in my home office, sifting through a mountain of emails, the humdrum of a regular weekday. She walked in like she always does, carrying a mug of coffee. She set it down gently on my desk, leaned in to give me a kiss on the forehead, and wished me a good day before heading out to work. It was such a simple, familiar gesture, something she's done 1,000 times before. But in that moment, it hit me like a freight train. This life we built together is about to end. This comfort, this routine, this illusion of normalcy, it's all a lie. And that realization shattered me. The dam broke, and every emotion I'd been suppressing came rushing in like a tidal wave. The sadness, the anger, the betrayal, the sheer rage. It was overwhelming. I sat there in that chair, staring at the coffee mug, and I just started crying. I mean, really crying. The kind of crying that leaves you gasping for air, clutching your chest because it physically hurts. I haven't cried like that since the day I buried my parents 2 years ago. You see, we've been together for 12 years. 12 years of love, laughter, and building a life together. Or so I thought. 12 years of thinking I knew her, trusted her, and shared everything with her. And now, all of that feels like a cruel joke. I found out last week that she's been having an affair, and not just with anyone. She's been seeing one of my closest friends, a man who's been a part of my life for almost as long as she has. He was there on our wedding day, standing beside me as my best man. He was there when I buried my parents, offering me comfort and support. And now, he's the man she's sneaking around with, meeting up with in secret, lying to me about. I don't know how I didn't see it sooner. Maybe I was too trusting. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. But the signs were there. The late-night texts, the sudden work emergencies, the moments when she seemed distant, preoccupied. And then there's the iPad. She doesn't realize it's still synced to her phone. That's how I found out. I've been tracking their conversations, piecing together the timeline, trying to make sense of it all. Yesterday, they met up again. They were supposed to go to a motel, but plans changed, and she ended up at his house. His wife was out of town, visiting her sick mother. The audacity of it all disgusts me. I can't wrap my head around how they could do this. How they could betray not just me, but also his wife, who has no idea what's going on. They're selfish, plain and simple, selfish and cruel. And yet, despite the anger, despite the hurt, there's this other emotion that lingers beneath it all: grief. I'm grieving the loss of the life we had, or at least the life I thought we had. I'm grieving the memories we made, the dreams we shared, the future we planned, and I'm grieving the loss of my friend, the man I once trusted, respected, and considered family. 12 years. That's what keeps playing in my head. 12 years down the drain because they couldn't keep it in their pants. How do you even begin to process that? How do you move forward knowing the two people you trusted most in the world have betrayed you in the worst possible way? I know what I need to do. I know I need to leave her. And I will. I've already started the process, meeting with lawyers, gathering information, making plans. But it's not easy. I'm not just walking away from a marriage. I'm walking away from the only family I have left. My parents are gone. I don't have siblings. It's just me now. And the thought of being alone, truly alone, is terrifying. I've been putting on a brave face, acting like everything's fine, because I can't let her know what I've discovered. Not yet. Not until the papers are served. But inside, I'm falling apart. I'm depressed, angry, and exhausted. Every day feels like a battle just to keep going. I've been thinking about therapy, something to help me cope with all of this, but even that feels overwhelming right now. I'm sharing this here because I don't know where else to turn. I don't have anyone I can talk to about this, not without risking everything. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, hoping for some kind of clarity, some kind of comfort. How do you move on from something like this? How do you rebuild your life when everything you've known has been ripped away? How do you trust again, love again, believe in anything again? I'm not okay, and I don't know if I ever will be. It's hard to know where to start because it still feels unreal, like it's happening to someone else. I'm sitting here trying to piece everything together, not just from this past weekend, but from the 9 years of my life that I thought I had figured out. My name's Ryan. I'm 32, and for the last 4 years I've been married to Kate, the woman I thought was my soulmate. We've been together for 9 years in total, and up until now, I thought we had the kind of relationship people envy. Now, I'm not so sure about anything anymore. Kate and I met in college when she was a sophomore and I was a senior. I was immediately drawn to her energy. She had this infectious laugh that could fill a room, and she always seemed to have this magnetic pull, like the world revolved around her, but not in a selfish way. It was more like she could light up anyone's day just by being there. We started dating, and within a year, we were inseparable. She was my best friend, my biggest cheerleader, and the person I couldn't imagine my life without. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Whose is? But we always had open communication, or so I thought. We promised each other early on that honesty would be the foundation of our relationship. We even had those serious talks about boundaries and what would be deal breakers for us. For me, cheating was a non-negotiable. I told her back then, and many times after, that if it ever happened, that would be it. No second chances. I couldn't imagine recovering from that kind of betrayal. Fast forward to now, and we've built a pretty good life together. We live in a cozy little house in the suburbs, both of us working jobs we enjoy. We've been talking about starting a family soon, maybe buying a bigger house in a few years. Our life felt solid, stable, and happy. Even our sex life, which you'd think might taper off after nearly a decade together, has only gotten better with time. We rarely fought, and when we did, it was over small, silly things like who left the kitchen a mess or forgot to take the trash out. Nothing ever felt like it could shake the foundation we had built, until now. Last weekend, Kate went back to her hometown to visit her parents. This wasn't unusual. She's always been close to her family and likes to make trips home every few months. I didn't think much of it when she left Friday night, though we did have a small argument before she left about keeping the house tidy. It was nothing major, just one of those little tiffs you forget about the next day. She texted me when she got to her parents' house, and I spent the rest of the evening unwinding after work. Saturday came and went, and our communication was minimal, but I figured she was just busy catching up with family and friends. I knew she was planning to meet some old friends at a bar that night, and I didn't give it a second thought. I trusted her completely. She'd never given me any reason not to. Before I went to bed, I sent her a quick text saying I hoped she was having a good night. When I woke up Sunday morning, I noticed a missed call from her at 4 a.m. My stomach sank a little, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she just wanted to chat after her night out. I called her back right away, but she didn't answer. I tried a few more times throughout the morning, but still nothing. Finally, around lunchtime, I got a text from her saying she was fine and driving back soon. Something about that message felt off, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. When Kate got home late that afternoon, I barely recognized her. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. Her eyes were red and puffy, her makeup was gone, and she seemed utterly broken. This wasn't the vibrant, confident woman I'd known for nearly a decade. I asked her what was wrong, but she barely spoke. She wouldn't even let me hug her. I made her some tea and gently tried to get her to open up. Eventually, the dam broke, and she started sobbing uncontrollably. She could hardly get the words out, but when she did, they shattered me. She told me she'd slept with someone the night before. I can't even describe what happened in my head at that moment. It was like something snapped. I felt this overwhelming wave of nothing. No anger, no sadness, just numbness. I got up, grabbed my car keys and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. I ended up at a park, walking aimlessly for what felt like hours. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Kate, but I turned it off. I couldn't deal with it, not yet. When I finally went home, I felt like I was on autopilot. I went straight to the garage, grabbed 2 suitcases, and started packing up Kate's things. She was lying on the floor in the living room, still crying, but I couldn't even look at her. I called her best friend, explained that Kate needed a place to stay, and told her to come pick her up. Then I told Kate I was leaving for a bit, and that her friend would be there soon. She tried to stop me, grabbing onto my legs and begging me not to go, but I couldn't stay. When I got back, Kate and her stuff were gone. The house felt eerily quiet. I should have felt relieved to have some space, but all I felt was emptiness. The next day, I told Kate I needed a full account of what happened. I told her to email me everything, and if she left anything out, there would be no chance of reconciliation. She sent the email that night, but I haven't opened it yet. I'm not sure I'm ready to read it. Since then, I've been moving through life like a robot. I've consulted divorce lawyers, moved money into separate accounts, and blocked Kate and her friends on social media. One of her friends even showed up at my house demanding an explanation, but I just told her to talk to Kate and shut the door. I've been working, exercising, and sleeping, trying to keep my mind occupied, but nothing feels real. I'm not angry, not sad, just hollow. Kate left a handwritten note on my doorstep yesterday asking me to meet with her tomorrow. I've been staring at it, trying to decide what to do. Part of me feels like meeting her would just reopen wounds that haven't even started to heal. Another part wonders if there's any point in trying to salvage this. Can trust ever be rebuilt after something like this? Or am I just delaying the inevitable? Is it normal to feel so detached, like I'm watching all of this happen to someone else? How do I even begin to process this and figure out what to do next? Should I meet with her? Or is that just setting myself up for more pain? My name's Rob, and I wish I could tell you my life story was one of triumph and joy. But right now, it feels like a never-ending spiral into heartbreak and confusion. I've never been one to spill my guts online, but maybe putting my story out there can help me process this, or maybe it will resonate with someone else going through the same kind of nightmare. So, here it is. My wife, soon-to-be ex, or STBX, as I've learned to call her in this odd new language of betrayal, had an affair with one of my closest friends for 15 months. She's leaving me for him. To understand the weight of it all, I think I need to rewind a bit. My wife, let's call her Sarah, and I have been married for 12 years. We met at a local cycling event, one of those charity races where everyone's smiling and hyped up on endorphins. She was fiery, competitive, and had this laugh that made me feel invincible. We built a life together in a small but close-knit community of cyclists and runners. If you've ever been part of a niche hobby like that, you know how tight people get. We shared everything: friends, races, stories, and struggles. It felt like family. We have 2 kids, Ellie, who's 10, and Jake, who just turned 7. They're the kind of kids who can light up a room. Ellie with her endless questions about the universe, and Jake with his goofy, knock-knock jokes. They're my world. And that world started to crack about 3 months ago. It was a Wednesday, a nothing special kind of day. I had been feeling this growing distance between Sarah and me for months, but couldn't put my finger on it. So I suggested we go on a date. Just something simple, like grabbing sandwiches and sitting by the lake where we used to go when we were first dating. She agreed, and for a moment I felt hopeful. Maybe this was our chance to reconnect. When we got there, she didn't waste time. Sitting by the water, she told me she didn't think she wanted to be married anymore. Just like that. No preamble. My heart stopped. My first thought was the kids. My second was denial. How could this be happening? Sure, we'd had rough patches. What marriage doesn't? But I genuinely thought we were solid. In the weeks that followed, I went through every stage of grief in rapid succession. I begged her to explain what went wrong. I suggested counseling. She agreed, but with a kind of detachment that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Something didn't add up. It wasn't just the typical, we've grown apart spiel. I started asking her outright if she was having an affair. Each time she looked at me like I was insane for even suggesting it. Her words, "Of course not," felt hollow. And yet I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. I wish I could say I followed some trail of breadcrumbs to uncover the truth, but it didn't happen that way. One evening, about a month after the lake confession, she handed me a beer and suggested we take a walk. There was something in her tone that made my stomach churn. I knew. I just knew. I was about to hear something that would change everything, and I did. She told me she'd been having an affair. With Matt. My friend. Someone I'd trusted with my secrets. Shared countless bike races and beers with. The words didn't seem real. It was like the world tilted on its axis, and I was free-falling into some alternate reality where the people you love most can destroy you without blinking. The story of how it started only made it worse. She stumbled upon some subreddit about affairs. She claimed she only clicked on it because another subreddit was calling it a cesspool, but instead of being disgusted, she got curious. She said she found Matt's post there. He'd written some ad that she thought was well written. I can't even wrap my head around that. My wife, the mother of my children, read his words, reached out, and within weeks they were sleeping together. They'd figured out their shared identities pretty quickly. Our city's cycling community isn't huge, and decided to roll the dice on ruining two families. She started extending work trips, sneaking off for solo, backpacking weekends, leaving work early. I never suspected a thing. And I'll admit, a part of me feels stupid for that. How could I not see it? How could I not know? The part that haunts me most is how she involved me without me even knowing. She encouraged me to go on cycling trips with Matt, to compete against him in races. Looking back, I see it now for what it was. Her twisted way of balancing guilt, or maybe just feeding some narcissistic game. When I confronted her about it, she said she thought it would be vindicating for me to beat him in races. Vindicating. The word makes me sick. What's worse, on one of those trips, Matt and I had a long heart-to-heart talk about our marriages. He even asked me for advice about his rocky relationship. I opened up to him about Sarah, about my worries and how I wanted to make things better. I thought we had this bond. Turns out, the whole time he was laughing at me behind my back. Matt's married, too. He has 2 kids, and just like Sarah, he's leaving them to start this new life with her. It's like they've detonated everything around them without a second thought. Now, I'm left picking up the pieces. For myself, for Ellie and Jake, for the life I thought we had. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning. Other days, I'm just numb. I've cycled through anger, heartbreak, and this hollow emptiness that's hard to describe. And here's the kicker. I still love her. Or maybe I love the version of her I thought was real. So here I am, spilling my guts to strangers on the internet, hoping for some clarity or maybe just a little solace. How do you rebuild after something like this? How do you trust anyone again? If you've been through something similar, I'd really love to hear your story. What got you through it? Because right now I'm just trying to survive one day at a time.